Hey guys, it's Carly, Fairy Gut Mother, and today we are talking about one of my favorite topics, and that's gut health. I truly believe that gut health should be the foundational approach towards eating healthier and just overall health in general. So I'm excited to move forward and talk about that today in a little bit more detail. So a little bit of background about me, who is the Fairy Gut Mother. My name's Carly Smith. I'm a nutritional therapist and a certified GAPS practitioner. I became interested in health and nutrition after being diagnosed with Lyme disease, and I went the whole antibiotics route and then felt like they were doing more harm on my body than good. So eventually I went off all my medications and did my own research and started implementing a gut healing protocol. And I really just became so empowered with the progress in my health just based on diet and lifestyle changes that I decided to go back to school, become a nutritional therapist so that I can spread this information and help other people heal as well. So getting started talking about gut health, why is it important? So nearly 80% of your immune system is located in the gut, which is huge. So pretty much your entire body, functions based off of gut health. I think it's really important, and in talking about some of the important factors about gut health before we really get started in diving into what actually gut health means. But so many diseases can be traced back to the gut. I think nearly some 90% of diseases can be traced back to the gut, anywhere from autoimmune conditions to neurological issues like depression, anxiety, all of these things, brain fog, cognitive function, can all be related back to the gut. Even arthritis, and even now they're relating Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis back to the gut. So it really is that foundational place to kind of start from healing versus end for any modality or any disease that you might be working to fight off. Even if it's just looking to lose weight, gut health is a really great place to start. So in speaking of that, there's a study that I like to share about gut health and weight loss, and the study is of two different sets of mice. One set has a pretty decent gut health. They're pretty fairly active, no health concerns, and the other set of mice had diabetes. They were overweight and particularly unhealthy, and all the researchers did was extract the gut bacteria from the diabetic mouse and implement that into the healthy mice, and they found that shortly thereafter the healthy mouse started developing unhealthy eating habits. It started gaining weight and eventually ended up developing diabetes just based off of the bacteria change in the gut. So our gut health is huge, and I have a lot of clients that come to me for weight loss, and I always start with the gut because that's really where, in my opinion, where we really should be looking as that foundational approach in order to be healthy. So a few signs your gut bacteria are out of whack. Definitely number one, any digestive related issues. So, gas, constipation, bloating, diarrhea, all of those things are red flags for dysfunction of the gut. A couple other ones, so mental issues. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, but absolutely depression, anxiety, brain fog, a lot of cognitive function and cognitive clarity comes from the gut. And in fact, nearly 95% of your body's serotonin levels are produced in the gut. So serotonin is that feel-good neurotransmitter. It's that healthy, happy neurotransmitter. Most people think that it's in the brain, but primarily it's in the gut. So gut health is super important for a lot of that cognitive function and clarity. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies, which I think is really important because I'll have clients come to see me and then they say that, they'll have a deficiency in certain vitamins or minerals, and they're like, well, I'm taking this supplement and eating these foods and I don't know why it won't, maintain at that level. And a lot of that comes from dysfunction of the gut. So you absorb a lot of nutrients in your small intestine. So if you have what's called leaky gut or an impaired gut that's unable to sort of absorb those nutrients, you're going to find those deficiencies. So making sure that you have a nice healed and sealed gut lining is going to be really important in helping to support some of those mineral deficiencies. Overuse of antibiotics is huge. Any medication just in general. So, if you've ever taken rounds of antibiotics for, any kinds of illnesses or even just over-the-counter medication, that's definitely going to inhibit the health of the gut and overall gut health. So definitely antibiotics. Stress is a huge factor as well. So chronic unmanaged stress, and we'll talk about that in quite a bit of detail. And that's why I really enforce the gut health lifestyle versus just not necessarily a diet, because it is a combination of diet and lifestyle changes that really help to, create that overall wellness. Skin problems, I call that the silent gut killer, because a lot of times, if you have eczema, acne, rosacea, a lot of these things can be related to a dysfunction of the gut, and people might not think that, like, my gut's just fine, it's just a skin issue, but in actuality, it really all relates back to the gut. And then, of course, autoimmune diseases can absolutely be related back to the gut. Rheumatoid arthritis, irritable bowel syndrome. So all of these things are major red flags for gut dysfunction. So in talking about gut health, I break it down into 3 different parts. So it's your gut flora, your gut barrier, and then there's that lifestyle component of it. So we'll start off by talking about the gut flora. So gut flora breaks down into a few different components. It's the bacteria and fungi in the gut. And so new research is now telling us that it's not just the beneficial bacteria that we're worried about. It's really the beneficial bacteria combined with the fungi. So it's the good and the bad, and having a healthy balance of all of it is really what we want to strive for. So you'll probably have heard the term microbiome before, and that's really your gut bacteria. And then there's mycobiome, which is really referring to the fungi. So it's a balance of both of those to kind of create that healthy ecosystem and maintain that homeostasis within the gut. So what causes these gut bacteria and fungi to grow out of whack? Well, stress, one of them, medications, diet, all of these things we've kind of been talking about, they can all change those levels of bacteria. So it's really important to make sure all of these things are stable to help create a healthy environment in the gut. So when you think about flora and how to repopulate that, one of the most common terms that come to mind is probiotics. So probiotics are just that beneficial bacteria and fungi that are in the gut that's going to help boost your immune system, help you absorb nutrients, and maintain a healthy gut. So number one thing that you can do with probiotics and getting that into your system is through supplements. So I recommend a supplement called Biome, B-I-O-H-M, and they are one of my favorite supplements to recommend because they are a mixture of the beneficial bacteria and fungi in the gut. And not very many probiotics that are sold on the shelves nowadays contain both of these components, and you really need both of those in order to create that healthy environment. Plus, what I love about this product is it also contains a digestive enzyme that's an amylase that helps break down digestive plaque, because what researchers found were that the bacteria and fungi were growing out of control and then teaming up together and kind of building this barrier that nothing could really break through. So this enzyme gets in there, breaks down that barrier, and actually gets in, so you can really work towards repopulating that gut with that bacteria balance. So if you use code CARLY20 on their website, you get a discount, but I'm a huge fan of their product, and I really, really love what they're doing. So in addition to probiotics, you can also use a sort of food as medicine approach, which oftentimes I feel like the food is a really great place to start in getting some of the beneficial bacteria in your diet. So one of the things that you can start to include is homemade yogurt. So I'm actually a fan of dairy and grains as long as they're in their properly prepared form. So the reason why we have this dysfunction in our gut and an impaired ability to break down these foods is because generally we're eating them in their not so properly prepared form. So it's dairy in the form of processed dairy from cows fed lots of hormones and antibiotics and kept in inhumane conditions, and plus they're usually packed in with lots of preservatives and sugars and foods that are really not natural and wreak havoc on the gut. So if you can find dairy from a grass-fed source, no hormones or antibiotics, and then make your own yogurt, super easy, just buying a starter packet. I have a bunch of recipes on my website for it, but you can generally yield a higher probiotic content in your own yogurt. And oftentimes people that have trouble digesting dairy can tolerate their own homemade yogurt because it's less processed. You're in better control over the quality of the dairy that you're going to be using, and then it's also going to have that higher probiotic content than what you might find in the store shelves. So I would recommend that, and obviously everything in moderation. So I think dairy is great, but in moderation. Aged cheeses are also great to help kind of boost that enzyme and then those probiotic content, because the longer the age is, the more enzymes, the more probiotic content you're going to have in those as well. But again, think moderation. So just because, you know, homemade yogurt might be good for gut health doesn't mean you want to have it all the time. I kind of like to switch up the ways that I get my probiotics so that I'm getting them from different sources as well. Another option would be kefir, and kefir is kind of like a dairy grain, but what I love to do with kefir is throw it in my coconut water and then just kind of let it ferment and sit out on the counter. That's a really great way to get sort of like a non-dairy based drink, but also it's going to have some of that hydration benefits of the coconut water, and you're getting that probiotic content from the kefir as well. And in addition to those, I always recommend ferments. So ferments are another great way to get that probiotic content in the gut. Those are your kimchi, your sauerkraut, any fermented foods, but you want to make sure that they're raw and refrigerated. So stay away from like the canned sauerkrauts, for example, because that's going to be heated and processed and really destroy a lot of that live probiotic content and what we're looking for. You can also do miso, which is fermented soybean paste, and you can throw like a tablespoon of that in a broth and mix that all up and have a nice soup with that. It's super easy to cook with. Also really great in dressings as well. You can also do a kombucha. So just be mindful of kombucha. I don't want it to become the next soda. So really just pay attention to the sugar content and making sure that it's not super high. But again, similar to ferments and the sauerkraut and the kimchi, with the kombucha, you also want to make sure that it's not heated and heavily processed, that it's raw, so that it can preserve a lot of that beneficial bacteria, what we're looking for. And then I have a picture at the bottom for beet kvass, which is just a fermented beet tonic, and I like to use these as more of like I said, a tonic. So you mix a little bit in with some sparkling water. It's probably not the best tasting thing necessarily, but it's super helpful for digestion. Beets are really great for the liver and help kind of clear out any toxins. They get your bile moving, help stimulate digestion. So sometimes, throughout the day, you can just take a little bit of the beet kvass and mix it in with some sparkling water and lemon and drink that, and that's a really great way to kind of help get that probiotic content in the gut. So with more of this food as medicine approach, you can sort of mix and match some of these things and use them interchangeably. Maybe one week you make yogurt, then you don't make it again for the next few weeks, and instead you work with some miso and some ferments or some kombucha. So you're really getting your probiotics from a lot of different sources. So how to restore balance, eliminating triggers, this is really important as well. So in addition to incorporating that beneficial bacteria, we really want to make sure that we're eliminating the triggers, which are going to be really detrimental to gut health. So those are your processed foods, your sugars, and stress. So these are really important in helping to maintain that healthy microbiome as well. So prebiotics, this is another form that's going to be really helpful in maintaining that beneficial bacteria in the gut. So you hear about probiotics, those are your bacteria and the fungi. Prebiotics are essentially what the bacteria eat to live on in the gut. So when you see prebiotics, think fiber, because that is what that beneficial bacteria and fungi and all of that good stuff really needs to live in the gut. So you can take probiotics in a supplement form all day long, but if you're still maintaining a diet that's really heavily processed foods, it's not really going to do much because there's nothing for them to really live on in the gut when they get there. So some of the best foods for probiotics are your leafy greens, dandelion greens, which are awesome. You can do leeks, which are just like onions, jicama, garlic, lots of just cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower. So think again, prebiotics, think fiber. And these foods are best consumed raw, but if you can kind of try to get these into your diet a little bit more, then that's kind of what we're looking for. So we talked about the gut flora. Now we're going to be moving on to the gut barrier. So when you think about the gut barrier, this is your gut lining. And what's going to happen is, what you want to see is a nice healed and sealed gut lining. So I like to use the analogy of a garden hose. So a garden hose is just a nice sealed lining. That's what we want our gut to look like. But sometimes we have tiny little lacerations or permeable gut lining, and that allows toxins to seep into the system. And so as a garden hose example, that would be like little kinks or holes in the hose so that water kind of spurts out everywhere, and we don't want that. So what causes this to happen? What causes our gut lining to become leaky? Well, that's stress, medications, and diet. All of those things can cause the leaky gut. And this is really dangerous because this is where you're getting undigested foods into your bloodstream, toxins into your bloodstream, and that's not good for the body. This is where a lot of autoimmune conditions come in. This is where a lot of food allergies actually come into play as well. So we really want to work towards healing that gut lining. So the first way to work towards healing the gut lining is actually through digestion. So we want to make sure that our foods are being properly digested before they hit the gut. The gut doesn't have teeth, right? So you want to make sure that they're properly digested, everything's broken down before it hits the gut. And so when you think about digestive enzymes, so they help break down foods to become more easily absorbed. The most common ones are your hydrochloric acid and pepsin, and these are two naturally occurring digestive enzymes in the stomach, and they really help to break down your foods. A lot of times our digestive enzymes decrease as we age, but they also decrease with stress, medications, diet. All of these things are going to decrease these enzymes, and so it really starts with digestion, making sure that we're properly breaking down our food. So I always recommend bringing in some sort of digestive enzyme support with those enzymes in it, like hydrochloric acid and pepsin, and starting with a low dose and then kind of working your way up so that you can taper them off or build them up as you need. Now, this isn't something that you're going to be on forever, but certainly as a means to kind of help with gut health and help break down your foods would be super helpful. And if you are adverse to taking supplements, you can always do what's called digestive bitters, and they're just that. They're bitter. They're just herbs that are made into like a little tincture or a tonic, and you just put a few drops in your mouth before you eat, and it just helps stimulate your digestive enzymes, stimulate the gastric juices, so that you can kind of break down all your foods better. So there's a couple different options for you there. In addition to the digestive enzymes, so now moving on to the digestive tract, how do we actually heal that gut lining? One of the best ways to do that is through a nutrient called L-glutamine. So L-glutamine is a major fuel source of your small intestine, and it's also an essential amino acid, and it's needed for your body to repair. So amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So think of these as sort of the building blocks for the small and large intestine. So collagen peptides are another source of nutrients that are going to help rebuild the gut lining. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. This can be found in a lot of powder supplements, like Vital Proteins has an amazing line of different kinds of collagen powders. And then I just use them interchangeably with like a protein powder. So you can put it in different smoothies, you can use it in different recipes, but again, it's going to have a lot of nutrients that are really helpful in rebuilding the gut lining. It's great for your hair, nails, inflammation, all sorts of different health benefits from collagen peptides. And then bone broth, of course, is one of my favorite things to help heal and seal the gut lining. Bone broth has countless health benefits. It's great for easing inflammation. It's great for your detoxification pathways. It facilitates a healthy metabolism. It's full of vitamins and minerals, so it's excellent for hydration. It's just the health benefits of bone broth are really very abundant. So I always recommend bringing that into your diet as much as possible. I always joke with people that bone broth is the new Windex. So if you've ever seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, you know that the dad puts Windex on absolutely everything, and he's convinced that Windex is the cure-all for whatever. And I just joke that bone broth is the new Windex, because I truly believe that it's just amazing healing superpowers. It's like the new superfood. And you know, I can't say enough amazing things about it, because it really does nourish your body from the inside out, the entire way through your system as you're consuming it, going through your entire digestive tract. So I really recommend, if there's one thing that you do, is just start incorporating a broth into your diet. So people get really hung up on how to make a bone broth, so I'm just going to talk about it briefly, and I have more information of this on my website as well as on my YouTube channel. I have a 2-part series on how to make bone broth. But essentially, I really recommend people, if your gut is super compromised, starting with a meat stock. So that's just like a big roast versus, you know, the actual marrow bones and knuckle bones. If you feel like you have, you know, pretty decent gut health, but you could use, you know, a little bit of extra support, I always recommend starting with a chicken broth. So that's just a whole chicken in your slow cooker, and then putting in whatever kind of fixings you want. So that's a staple is like your carrots, onions, celery, bay leaves, and some spices. Put some water in there, throw it on low of 24 hours, and then when you're ready, strain it and reserve it. You can freeze it in little ice cube trays, which is super helpful. So when you need some, you just pop out a couple ice cube trays, and that's really great for saving it as well. It can last in the freezer for generally up to about a year, and the fridge probably about a week or so. But this is really helpful to have on hand, and it's super easy to make and super nourishing for the gut. You can take the broth and just sip it as is. You can incorporate it into different soups and recipes. I cook my oatmeal in it. I have a bunch of recipes on my website where I'm incorporating broth into dressings, pestos, all sorts of different things. So there's also options for a veggie bone broth if you are vegan or vegetarian, and I get asked this question a lot. Can I make a bone broth being vegan or vegetarian? And if so, is it going to yield the same gut healing benefits? So the answer to that is yes, of course, you can always make a veggie broth, but anytime you change any recipe, it's going to have different health benefits. So in order to make it gut healthy and gut friendly without having some of the nutrients from the meat, I always recommend sourcing your highest, most nutrient dense vegetables, so you're getting a ton of nutrients in there from that. And also making sure that you're sourcing in like some foods like mushrooms, because they also have healing benefits for the gut as well. So do artichokes. So trying to find those nutrients also that are really high in L-glutamine, because again, we just talked about L-glutamine being kind of like that building block of the gut barrier, and there's a lot of vegetables that are super high in L-glutamine, carrots, celery, beets, to name a few. You can also add in miso to your broth. That's going to give you some more of that probiotic content. So yes, there is ways that you can make a veggie broth. I have a really delicious veggie broth on my website that has seaweed and all sorts of different kinds of mushrooms and nutrients and sweet potato. So it's really nutrient dense, great tasting, and also good for gut health as well. So you can absolutely still get those same healing benefits from this. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the gut health lifestyle. So just to recap, we've talked about the gut flora, which is our probiotics, our prebiotics, the beneficial bacteria and fungi in the gut. And then we've talked about the gut barrier, which is that nice healed and sealed gut lining that we want to think about. So now we're talking about the lifestyle component, and I'm a huge advocate that gut health is a lifestyle, not just a diet. So that means that, you know, the quality of life that we have, our stress levels, all play an important role in the health of the gut. And oftentimes I feel like the lifestyle component is, if not more important than the diet. So we'll talk a little bit about that. When I talk about lifestyle, it's really about being able to manage our stress levels. And in today's world, we are just bombarded by stress. So, you know, we're not talking about the little bits of stress where our body is designed to handle. So for instance, you have a really busy schedule this week, or maybe you have a deadline or something like that. That's okay. That's the kind of stress that our body can handle. What our body can't handle is this chronic, unmanaged stress that we seem to be under, and that's where it's really dangerous. So I use this analogy that if you're hiking and you're being chased by a mountain lion, all of a sudden your cortisol, your adrenaline shoots up, and your body goes into that fight or flight mode. Your heart starts beating really fast. All sorts of things happen to your body when you're in that situation. But then you're safe, you find shelter, and everything is good, and then your body sort of naturally uses its inflammation to help kind of heal and calm everything down and return to homeostasis. So that's a natural response for the body. And that's what our body's designed to kind of do. Our body cannot differentiate between being chased by a mountain lion or the stress is at work. So it reacts the exact same way. And what the dangerous part is that, if you're under this sort of chronic stress for prolonged periods of time, the body just reacts the exact same way. So you're getting an extreme amount of cortisol flooded into the system that the body really doesn't have a way of handling. And eventually it starts wreaking havoc on the body, weakening the gut lining, changing the pH environment in the gut, which is going to alter the bacteria, and then leading to a demise in the immune system, and then kind of perpetuating everything over again. So the stresses that we really want to watch out for are the chronic ones. So if you're in a toxic relationship, or you hate your job, or ones that you really have to endure every single day for a prolonged period of time, that's really where the damage is done. So in order to combat that, I talk about the gut health lifestyle, and that's why I really bring in yoga into a lot of what I do, because I really believe that it really helps to calm the mind, calm the body, and you're getting a little bit of movement, but at the same time, it's still, very therapeutic for your body. So finding ways to kind of find things that are therapeutic to you. So now I realize that yoga isn't for everyone, but finding what makes you happy and really taking that time out for yourself. So whether that's, 15, 20 minutes a day that you can take your dog for a walk, or get out in nature, go for a hike, take some time away. And self-care doesn't always necessarily have to be Epsom salt baths and, Netflix. I mean, maybe it's really just setting healthy boundaries and saying, this is as much as my body can handle. I have to take time for myself. So really coming back to you, self-care is gut health. It's feeding our bodies nourishing foods. It's taking time out for self-care. It's just taking care of us and being able to establish healthy boundaries and really protect our energy, because at the end of the day, that's really going to have a really big impact on gut health. And I have a lot of clients that I work with who have pretty decent diets, but in evaluating their gut profiles, it's pretty out of whack, and all of that comes from the stress levels. So stress is super important to being able to maintain and manage. And then sleeping, at least 8 hours of sleep at night. And I generally recommend, whenever you can, sleeping between the hours of 7 and 9 in the morning, because those are the most helpful for healing your adrenals. So your adrenals are the little almond-shaped glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they regulate our stress and fight or flight systems. So anytime you can get that later sleep in the morning, even if it's on the weekend or one day a week, I really encourage you to get it, because it's super nourishing and repairing for the body. So that's it on my talk about gut health. Thank you guys so much for listening. I have a lot more information available on my website, fairygutmother.com. You follow me on Instagram, fairygutmother, Facebook, YouTube, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks so much.